Imagine for a second stepping into a world where the greatest, the most decisive victories are completely silent.
Oh, yeah. Like absolutely no clashing, no yelling, and just zero chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a place where everything is decided before a single action is even taken. It takes about 10 seconds to just picture that perfectly still air.
Right. You're walking into this space where it feels incredibly calm, but massive shifts in power and outcomes are constantly happening right under the surface.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are entering the world of Sun Tzu.
It's such a fascinating space because it challenges, well, basically everything we assume about how to solve a problem.
It really does. I mean, we usually associate winning with this dramatic, visible effort, right? Like a forceful argument or sweat or noise.
Right. Overcoming resistance with just sheer willpower.
Yeah, exactly. But here, true strength looks like absolute calm. So what do the people in this world see that the rest of us are completely missing?
Well, to really understand this world, we have to look closely at what the people here actually value.
Because it's definitely not what we value in our standard daily life.
No, not at all. I mean, society usually respects the person who pushes the hardest or, shouts the loudest. But here, they do not value force. They value control.
Control, okay. So if someone is trying to assert dominance by just being the loudest or the strongest, how is that viewed?
They just see that as a total liability.
Yeah.
You look at that person and see someone expending unnecessary energy.
Wow. So it's not intimidating to them, it's foolish.
Exactly. They see a profound waste of resources. The unshakable core belief in this world is that the absolute best victory is winning without fighting.
Winning without fighting, that is so counterintuitive to how most of us operate.
It is. Because fighting of any kind, whether it's a physical clash or, a heated boardroom debate, or even just throwing a massive budget at a problem, it's all viewed through this lens of what we might call the friction tax.
Oh, the friction tax, I like that. Meaning like every time you engage directly in a conflict, you're paying a heavy toll.
Right. You lose energy, you lose time, you might damage a
You
relationship.
burn through your capital.
Exactly. You also lose optionality, and honestly, you just harden your opposition's resolve. The friction tax is incredibly steep.
So they just want to avoid paying that tax at all costs.
That's the goal. They deeply desire to achieve their goals with the absolute minimum risk, the minimum loss, and just the fewest resources possible.
So when they look at a situation, their first question is never, how do I crush this obstacle?
No, never. Their primary question is, how do I navigate this situation to get exactly what I want while preserving everything I have?
Which makes total sense when you frame it like that. But, when I think about why we default to force instead of that calm navigation, it really comes down to biology and ego.
Oh, 100%. Biology plays a huge role.
Right. Like when someone challenges us, our amygdala flares up, we get this massive spike of cortisol. The human brain literally screams at us to either hit back or run away.
Fight or flight. It's hardwired into us.
Exactly. So how do the people here short-circuit millions of years of human biology?
Well, they do it by completely changing their definition of what a threat actually is.
Okay, wait, what do you mean by that?
So for most of us, an insult or a blocked goal feels like a direct threat to our identity. Ego demands that we look tough in the moment, right?
Oh, yeah. Ego demands a loud, immediate victory so everyone knows we won.
But the people in this world recognize that ego is an incredibly expensive luxury.
An expensive luxury, wow.
Yeah, they cultivate radical emotional detachment because good strategy only cares about the objective. It doesn't care about your feelings.
Emotional detachment sounds great in theory, but it is so hard in practice. It actually reminds me of an emergency room doctor.
Oh, that's a really good analogy. How so?
Well, the doctor doesn't panic or get angry when they see a severe wound, right?
Wow.
They don't take the injury personally.
Right, they aren't offended by the bleeding.
Exactly. They just detach, they observe the biology of the problem, and they apply the exact right pressure to fix it.
That mechanism is exactly how the people in this world operate. If retreating helps you achieve the goal, you just retreat.
Because it's just biology. It's just a tactic.
Right. And if staying completely silent makes you look weak in the moment, but secures the long-term win, you stay silent.
So they refuse to let ego dictate their actions.
Yes, because ego always wants to pay the friction tax just to feel good right now.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. If brute force is wasteful and taking action inherently costs resources, does this hyper-efficiency just devolve into passivity?
Ah, I see what you're getting at.
Like, if fighting is so expensive, does this world breed a culture of just, sitting around avoiding conflict entirely?
Not at all. That's a huge misconception. Passivity is ignoring the world. The people here are actually hyper-engaged with it.
Okay, so how are they engaging without fighting?
They just refuse to engage on the obvious high-friction terms. They practice asymmetric engagement.
Asymmetric engagement. Break that down for me.
Instead of meeting strength with strength, they observe meticulously to map out the path of least resistance. Their daily reality is rooted in this deep, quiet observation long before they ever take a single step.
That makes me think about how we normally look at a challenge. When we face a massive obstacle, we usually obsess over how big and scary it is?
Oh, completely. We look at a competitor's massive market share or a problem's massive complexity, and we
Oh.
just get intimidated.
Right. We stare at the armor, we admire the strength of the thing blocking us.
We are totally mesmerized by the armor. But in this world, they are uniquely trained to ignore the shiny armor entirely and just scan for the structural flaw.
The structural flaw, so they're looking for like the overlooked detail.
Exactly, the overextended supply line, or maybe the emotional blind spot of their opponent. They seek out the single dependency that holds the whole obstacle together.
Can you give me a concrete way to visualize that? Like,
Right.
how do they flow around strong points without using that old cliche of, be like water finding cracks in a rock?
Sure, let's use a different visual. Imagine a massive, heavy boulder blocking a vital road.
Okay, got it. Huge boulder.
The instinct of brute force, the ego instinct, is to grab a sledgehammer and spend days exhausting yourself trying to smash the dead center of the rock.
Which sounds exhausting and probably won't work.
Right, but the person in this world, they study the environment around the boulder. They notice that the dirt underneath it is loose.
Ah,
They realize that if they just divert a tiny nearby stream to wash away that loose dirt, gravity will do all the work. The boulder just rolls out of the way on its own.
oh, wow. So they don't attack the strong point, the stone itself. They attack the weak point, the soft dirt beneath it, and let the environment do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And doing that requires a completely different cognitive process.
It really does. It means your decision making has to look less like a hype video or a pep rally and more like an algorithm.
Yes, an algorithm is a great way to put it.
So where does that algorithm actually start? How does this world train its people to act like this consistently?
It starts with a very specific, repeatable process. This is how the world actually functions and grows when its beliefs are put into motion.
An assembly line of strategy.
Precisely. It's a precise sequence of 6 steps that they follow to systematically dismantle any disadvantage.
Okay, let's walk through the sequence. Step one has to be that meticulous observation we were just talking about, right?
Right. But it can't just be looking around. Everyone looks.
So what are they actually doing differently in step one?
They are gathering data on absolutely everything, both visible and invisible. Step 1 is complete observation.
Meaning they don't just look at the obvious data points.
No, they don't just look at the numbers or the troops or the budget. They look at the hidden currents.
The hidden currents, like what?
Like analyzing the terrain, the morale of the people, the incentives, the weather, the emotional states. They map the entire ecosystem of the problem.
Oh, I see. It's the difference between noticing that a room is cold and noticing that the room is cold because someone left a window open 3 rooms away, which changed the air pressure in the hallway.
Exactly. They are tracing the causality of the environment.
Wow. Okay, so they trace the causality. Then what?
Which brings us directly to step 2.
Yeah.
Processing that observation to truly understand the situation.
Because observation is just raw data, right?
Right. Understanding is turning that raw data into a cognitive map of reality. You can have all the puzzle pieces sitting on the table, but if you don't know what the picture on the box looks like, you just have a mess.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's where that doctor analogy holds up again.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
How does the doctor fit here?
Well, the doctor observes the symptoms, the heart rate, the temperature, that's step 1.
Hmm.
But the understanding is actually diagnosing the underlying disease.
Spot on. So
Yeah.
step 1 is see the entire board. Step 2 is understand what the pieces actually mean and how they interact with each other.
Got it. Observe, then understand. What is step 3?
Step 3 is making a plan based entirely on that deep understanding.
And because they've removed ego, this plan has to be super realistic.
Completely. The plan is not based on what they wish the reality was, but what the reality actually is. They calculate the route that requires the least amount of friction to achieve the objective.
And this is where adaptability has to come in, right? Because you can't just have one rigid plan and force it to work. The environment is always changing.
Right. Rigidity breaks in this world. Adaptability survives.
So the plan isn't like a strict checklist.
No, the plan is less a rigid set of instructions and much more of a fluid set of principles. If the terrain changes, the plan adjusts instantly because the ultimate goal remains the only thing that actually matters.
Okay, so we have observation, understanding, and adaptable planning. What is step 4?
Step 4 is absolutely critical, and honestly, it is the step most people get wrong. You choose the right time.
Timing.
Yes. You do not just act when you feel ready, you act when the environment is most favorable. Timing is the invisible force multiplier here.
Timing feels like luck to a lot of people, just, being in the right place at the right moment.
Right, but you're saying they engineer their timing.
Exactly. How do they engineer it?
It's about recognizing the natural life cycle of a situation. Think of an agricultural harvest.
Okay, harvesting crops.
You don't pull the fruit from the tree just because you happen to be hungry today.
No, obviously not, or it'll be sour.
Exactly. You pull the fruit when it is perfectly ripe and yields the most nourishment for the least effort. If you try to force it early, you completely ruin the crop.
So patience is huge here.
It is, but this world teaches that patience is not the absence of action. Patience is the aggressive accumulation of advantage.
The aggressive accumulation of advantage. I love that phrase. That flips the whole concept of waiting completely on its head.
It really does. Waiting isn't dead time. It is active compounding.
Because while you are waiting, you're gathering more information.
Yes, you're letting the other side tire themselves out. You're watching the environment shift until the odds are so overwhelmingly in your favor that you cannot possibly lose.
You are stacking the deck so thoroughly that the game is decided before the cards are even dealt.
Precisely. You wait for the opponent to make an error, or for their supply line to stretch too thin, or, for their emotional state to turn to frustration.
And only then do you move to step 5.
Only then. Which brings us to the action itself. Step 5 is acting with minimum cost.
Because you've already done all the hard work in the first 4 steps.
Exactly. Because you have observed, understood, planned, and waited for the exact right millisecond, the action you take requires almost zero effort.
You just do the least amount of work necessary to create the biggest impact.
Right.
Let me bring in a visual for this because it feels like building an elaborate, perfectly aligned domino track in a massive gymnasium.
Oh, that's a great image.
Yeah, and the final action, step 5, is nothing more than just a tiny, gentle tap on the very first domino.
Exactly. It uses almost zero energy.
Right, and it looks completely effortless to an outsider who is just watching this entire room of dominoes fall down.
But the tap only works because you align the environment so that gravity and momentum do the work for you.
Yeah. If you hadn't spent the time observing the floor's terrain, understanding the distance between the blocks, and waiting for the wind in the room to die down.
Then one piece would be misaligned.
And if it misaligns, the chain reaction just stops. Then you're stuck running around the gymnasium, frantically knocking over every single domino by hand.
Exactly. That running around is fighting. That is the chaos most people live in.
That's paying the friction tax every single day.
Yes. By mastering this assembly line of strategy, you let the system do the work. You control the outcome without expending the energy.
Which brings us to the final step, right? Step 6.
Right. Achieve the goal. The objective is secured, the resources are completely preserved, and the environment remains stable.
Observe, understand, plan, choose the time, act with minimum cost, achieve the goal. It is such a beautiful, almost serene way to look at challenges.
It really is.
But, also kind of terrifying if you are on the receiving end of it. I mean, you wouldn't even know you were losing until the entire situation was already over.
That's the point. Because the core truth they understand is that good strategy literally changes the outcome before the encounter ever begins.
It makes our usual way of doing things seem so utterly exhausting, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. Clear information is not just trivia here. It is the currency that buys better decisions.
But instead, we rush in, we react defensively.
We spend all our energy putting out fires that we probably started ourselves by not observing carefully in the first place.
We really do. We romanticize the struggle and the sweat, but we are just paying a tax we don't need to pay.
The center of gravity for this entire world is that true strength is a quiet, observant mind.
Not the loudest voice in the room.
Right. We usually want to be the storm. We want to be the loud, destructive force that imposes its will on the world.
But this world teaches you to be the landscape that the storm breaks against.
Exactly. The landscape doesn't take the storm personally.
Right, the storm expends all its energy, throws its lightning, and eventually just fades into nothing.
And the landscape remains completely unchanged, having won simply by understanding its own shape and waiting out the noise. It simply endures, adapts, and outlasts.
This exploration of the world of Sun Tzu, it just fundamentally shifts how you evaluate your own
It
reactions.
proves that preparation always matters infinitely more than force.
It really does. The idea that power is not about who hits the hardest, but who maps the room the best, is something you can apply the second you walk away from listening to this.
Absolutely.
Because we all face moments where our absolute first instinct is to push back with force.
Every day.
A coworker challenges your idea, a project hits a brick wall, or someone just cuts you off in traffic, and that amygdala flares up.
The ego demands that you hit back harder.
But the next time you feel that spike of adrenaline, take a breath and step into this silent world. Look at a challenge or conflict you are facing right now. How could you win it without fighting?